And nominate podcast best friend goes down. And nominate podcast best friend goes down. And nominate podcast best friend goes down. Please be seated, because now it's time for What the Faith.
Hi there, and welcome to episode 45 of What the Faith.
Woohoo!
Yay! Gee, it's been a while, hasn't it, Jared?
It's back. We're back.
We're back again. Gee, it seems like we've had big gaps between all of our episodes this year, but
Seemed to take just took a little mid-year break, that's all.
that's right, yep.
We start off strong. We talk about how we're going to commit, and how we're going to do this on a weekly or a monthly or a X basis. And
Yep.
what are we at now? So far, it's a 9-month basis.
Yeah, so we're consistent in that sense, aren't we?
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
so it's been a while. How have you been, Jared?
Well, plenty of things been happening in the interim, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, our last episode we had two episodes in October. One was...
Specials.
Yeah, two special ones. Episode 44, where Caroline and I interviewed Father Uncle Alex, who came all the way from Peru just for us. Not really, okay, but he came here for his holiday in Australia, and he was also doing some preaching at our parish, and we got to listen to his story as well on our podcast. We asked him some questions, and then he did a talk at our parish, which we were able to record and put as episode. We called it 44 and a half, so just a little bonus Father Uncle Alex content. But here we are for episode 45 now. So it's been a long gap in between. And how do you explain away a gap that big? I guess we've just been so damn busy, and I'll explain why later. But
plenty on.
Yeah. So what we will do for today's episode is we'll talk about what's happened since, because I guess there's a couple of things that have happened.
Get our excuses in.
Yeah, get all the
Start
excuses.
off with an
yeah.
excuse.
What are all the excuses that we could possibly have for not recording for such a long
The
time?
dog ate our microphone.
So, yeah, we can go with that. Yeah, it was stolen by some Jawas or something like that. That's a Star Wars joke. What is it? Today I'll also talk about the Australian Catholic Youth Festival, which I attended just a couple of weeks ago with my youth group. So give some reflections on that. It is the season of Advent. There's not much. Actually, it's an interesting Advent this year because we have 1 week less of Advent, because the last Sunday of Advent also happens to be the
Christmas
same day
Eve.
that the Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting. So it's a bit of a rushed one, but we'll talk about what Pope Francis actually said at the beginning of Advent during one of his Sunday homilies at a general audience that he gave. And lastly, what's going on with Pope Francis and his new crossguard lightsaber crossier? We'll talk about that later. So Jared, since the last time you've podcasted, which was actually funny enough, it was that the last time we did a proper podcast as a team was Easter. We did an Easter one, talk about the resurrection and so on. What's happened in your life since?
A little bit.
Yeah, give us a bit of a rundown.
All right. Well, I suppose you got all the usuals: the work, the school, the kids, etc. I suppose work-wise, got an internal promotion. Can now do financial planning as well as accounting. So
Going up in the world.
I think, what was it, our second or third podcast? We did a little,
Yes.
tidbits with Sister Auntie Miriam. I've got that the right way around.
Episode
or
3.
Auntie Sister Miriam.
Sister Auntie Miriam, that's
Sister
right.
Auntie Miriam, yep. And everyone
the
else giving
lingo worked out.
little tidbits of information. One of mine was accounting, so
Yeah.
that was my main role, and now it's branched out. It's almost had to with legislation change and just the closely interrelation between them. That financial planning almost goes hand in hand with accounting. If you can't, if you're doing one, you almost need the other.
Oops, sorry.
He's fallen asleep.
Sorry, you just said legislation. What? Sorry, what are we doing? Oh, we're doing a podcast. Oh, we better wake up. Sorry, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so can do both. Can do a bit of both now. So it's really that kind of. You'll probably notice in what you do is, as a school teacher, is helping students and helping them to achieve what they can in terms of study. Similar in a way, as an accountant and a financial planner, is that you're almost like a teacher. People just aren't as financial literate. Not even, I mean, they don't necessarily need to be, but that's why they have people that are accountants and financial planners,
Jared,
etc.
I'm not financial literate, so I'll wear that.
Yeah,
I'm happy to take
not
that,
staring at you directly when I say that, but
Can you stop staring at me now?
but I suppose that's that kind of employment. I enjoy it, doing it, because people ask you the questions and they look to you for the answers.
Yeah.
And it's similar in a way to being a student-teacher relationship, in that the people generally appreciate, well, perhaps being adults, maybe they even appreciate it more than the students might.
Yeah, I mean, I guess our roles are similar in that we guide people through the system, isn't it? Like,
I suppose you're senior school, so they're appreciative once they get to that stage.
Yeah. I got so many awesome Star Wars gifts this year. I've got to stop talking about Star Wars in my classroom, I think. Yeah. Oh, great. So that's really good. What else has happened?
What else might have happened? Caitlin's done with kinder. That was her last day
Oh,
today.
yes.
So
Excellent.
she's taking the big step to school.
Off to school next year. How exciting. Yes.
Yep.
We saw, what's it? I was going to say your sister. Sorry, your wife. Still mental blank on the holidays. But she sent everyone a photo of Caitlin trying out her school uniform a couple of months ago. That was really exciting. Can't believe how big she's getting now. Yeah.
So it's that's just that sort of stuff. Keeping the growing and transitioning a family has been the main thing. That and getting tied up with work, trying to fit in Star Wars miniature days, which happen few and far between.
We've had a couple of those. Yeah, we'll have quite a few more coming up now. I think with our little holiday coming up, so that's definitely going to happen. Yeah.
And how about yourself? You've obviously had a few bigger changes, which is let's get the excuse in now. That's probably one of the reasons why we've been a little bit more lax in doing things. Is that you've had probably one of your busiest years, and you're quite busy as it is.
I actually thought last year was probably the busiest year I've had in a while, and then this year came and swept that all away. Yeah, a couple of things that have been happening. I mean,
I think it's not so much busyness, but the transition that you're now having.
Yes. So
and I'll let you elucidate.
Well, so transition number one is that after 8 years of no visitors, no new little visitors to the Sant household, my wife Isabel is pregnant, which we are so excited about. And I've got to say, when Isabel told me this year that she suspected that she was pregnant and did a pregnancy test or whatever, because it had been such a long time, since Damien's 8 years old now, so because it had been a long time since his birth and now, I said to Isabel, basically, I want to believe this is true. I said, but I don't want to get excited until we're absolutely sure, because I don't want to get my hopes up, because we've been waiting for this for such a long time. So being the good husband that I was, I made her do about 3 or 4 more pregnancy tests, which all came up positive. But Isabel and I went through a process of is this real? Is this real? It was like a dream in a way. Like, how real is it? Even after we went to the doctor who did another pregnancy test, Isabel's 5th probably, and said, yep, they're 99% accurate. Congratulations. So, okay. Yeah, that's good. We walked out and I was still like
1%.
Yeah, I did that 1% to be confirmed. And it wasn't actually until we did an ultrasound that I think it was really early. It was like 6 or 7 weeks. And all you get is, they call it a fetal pole. It's just like a little, I don't know how to, it's like a
strip,
stick. I don't know, but it had a heartbeat,
Yeah, that's it. That's probably the deal sealer is the heartbeat.
And that sealed the deal. And I was like, all right, this is awesome. We've got baby coming along. And yeah, we've had 2 ultrasounds since then. We've seen some features and whatever else, and it's absolutely beautiful. So it really is an answer to our prayers. I think that that we have this baby coming along, because I think we'd started to accept that Damien was it, and we were grateful, because I mean, sadly there are couples where they're still trying to work out why their first baby hasn't come. And so we're really grateful that we've got Damien in our lives, but it's beautiful that that now we've got this this next child coming up. So Isabel is due in March. She's a trooper. She's put up with her pregnancy and put up with me at the same time. So I think she deserves a medal for that.
She's getting a baby instead.
She's getting a baby, yeah. So
should be more useful than a medal.
Yeah, and we've already picked out our baby's name. So
I was just going to say, listeners.
Yeah, but
competition time.
Yeah, but
if you got any suggestions,
if you've got any better ones than we have, which I can't tell you what they are. So
Priscilla, Isabel's sister, and my wife has come up with several names.
Yes,
she suggested Merlin if it's a boy.
Okay,
Morgana if it's a girl.
Okay,
she's been watching that Merlin show.
Yeah. So we'll put those on the list, but probably somewhere near the bottom.
She's been banned from suggesting anymore.
Yeah, done. Yeah, it's funny. We've had a lot of really odd name suggestions rather than serious ones. So we did have some Star Wars ones, which actually I was kind of for, but I've got Isabel to sort of cross-check everything and make sure it's all legit, and so that clearly isn't going to happen.
And she's not going to check where they're from, are they? You just say, how about Ray for a nice little
Ray's
girl's
a great name. How about Luke? Luke's, it's a gospel writer's name, one of the evangelists. Also happens to be a legendary Star Wars character. No, it's a no. She's sitting right across from me eating dinner. Yeah, she's our silent person today.
What about Kylo?
Kylo is a great name. It just happens to be attached to a very evil character. He might turn in the 3rd movie. Who knows? We'll see.
Put that name on the back burner.
Yeah.
If there's any babies being born after December 2019, then we might get a Kylo.
Can I point out, considering what Kylo Ren actually did to his own father in the first Star Wars movie, I'm not too keen on the thought of it. I actually don't want to be lightsabered by my own son at some point in like 30 years from now. So let's not go with that. Setting up my own doom.
You got to get yourself a Wookiee first.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking of that time when we did Wookiee sounding objects. I don't know what episode that was.
Things that sound like Chewbacca, yeah.
Yeah, things that sound like Chewbacca.
In the archives.
Yeah, it's all in the yeah. Just go through our past episodes, you'll find it.
Or don't if you don't really want to hear that.
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea. Hey, it couldn't be any worse than Noah's.
Gotta do another skit.
Yeah, we
Gotta
do
do another
skit. we need Lino back to do that. Yeah.
We need to not tell Caroline. See, the way we got away with Noah's was Caroline was pregnant.
That's right. Yes.
And she came back with vengeance the next episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Until she couldn't forcibly do any more podcasts.
It's really hard to accept
Harry, wasn't
art.
it?
Yeah, it was.
When Harry was born, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to accept good art for some people, I guess. Yeah. But anyway, let's other big news in Lindsay's life. The other reason it was so busy this year is because I've just finished my theology degree finally. I just actually it was only last week on Friday that I finally got the last result for my last subject, so I'm really grateful for that. But that was look, I'll be honest, that was a hell of a process. That last subject, I went into it wanting to finish my course, and maybe that was the wrong attitude because it was the last. You know that thing about falling over at the last hurdle. That was a really hard last hurdle. I had 6,000 words worth of yes, actually no, I had about 6,000 words worth of essays to write. So a 2,000 word essay and a 4,000 word one, and I did them incredibly late. My lecturer was kind enough to accept them, but it was just really challenging because I was so busy. Actually, it was getting ready for the Catholic Youth Festival as well, being a little bit busier at home trying to help out with things here. So I actually, for a moment, had considered dropping out of the subject, even though all I had to do was write one more essay to pass it. And then maybe doing another one next year, which I really didn't want to do because, with baby coming along, I don't know when I was going to get it done. So my saving grace was actually Melbourne Cup Day and that's it. So we got an audience here who's laughing not at us but at the TV. But my saving grace was actually Melbourne Cup Day. I'd gone to the Catholic Theological College Library a couple of days before and got some books to get ready for my essay, did my readings and whatever. And then on Cup Day from 10 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock the next morning, I just banged out those 4,000 words and got them done. And fortunately, my lecturer was kind enough to accept it. He was really good about it, actually. And then, I got my pass mark. I won't say what grade it was, but I got my...
It's above 50. That's what you need these days?
Well, look, it was well above 50, which is a good thing.
That's what it is. Everything else is cream. If that's all you're trying to do is finish it.
There's a lot of cream on the top, which was good. But it was...
51.
Yeah, and a half. But it was really good to get that done. So my theology degree is to complete, so I've done that, and I'm not doing any more further study for a long, long time. I'll just take it
next year.
Next year, yeah. Is that the long time, isn't it? Yeah. No, I'll definitely be taking a break next year, and I'll look at I'm actually considering doing a master's the year after next, but I'll see. Yeah, everything's got to line up first. We'll see. Like my family's got to come first now, so I'll do that.
And you've got to be interested in studying.
And I've got to be motivated. Yeah. But I think taking a year off, the itch will eventually come back, and I'll want to do further study.
Yeah, you'll certainly need something, because if you're finishing like you are now, you don't want to just, okay, I'm going to start again, and I'll be up for it.
Yeah, look, nah. I just know now if I do start next year, I won't get anything done. It's better off just to wait for a bit longer. Yeah, so that was really awesome. Yeah, and I think that's about it. If I covered off all the big things that have happened since. Yeah. So, shall we move on to our next topic, which is the Australian Catholic Youth Festival. Yeah, so
that's probably been your other thing that's sort of, as well as being a leader of a youth group, you got that weekly or so, but then fundraising for this, what was in Sydney, was it 5 figures?
It was, yeah.
And attempting to fundraise the bulk of that over the 2 years in between the last one.
Yeah, I've got to say that while there was so much positive that came out of this festival, this was easily the hardest one to get ready for, and the hardest one to participate in as well. There were so many challenges throughout this year getting this off the ground. And one of the challenges we had, like compared to this year's festival, ACYF 2015 in Adelaide, feels like it was so easy now. Like when we look back, I will not forget how challenging it was to get this off the ground. And look, I wasn't on my own. I had 3 other people from our youth group helping me out, plus our young people in our youth group as well, who all pitched in to help us. But we took a group of 24 all together, and we also teamed up with St. Mary's Parish. They put together a group of 7 adults as well, young adults, and so it was really good because their leaders, Justin and Veronica, helped us a lot with the logistics as well. So, I looked after the accommodation, they looked after the flights. We would look at, our travel plans while we were there, and, what trains we were going to catch. So we actually had a good number of people to work and get all that sorted out, which was really good, because if it was just 2 or 3 of us, I think we would have been dead by the time we got to Sydney. But yeah, like you said, we had to do quite a bit of fundraising. We needed to raise, I think it was, now I'm just giving the ballpark figure because I'm still actually crunching the numbers now, but it was easily about $12,500. And that was to sort out our flights, our accommodation, and we saved as much as we could wherever we could as well, for all the deals that we could. We had to feed 24 people while we were in Sydney as well, and just have emergency money for anything else. So also the cost of registration as well. So that was about $220 per person. So already close to $5,000 when you times it by 24. And our youth group members, everyone pitched in $100 each, as like a deposit. But we also had about 5 or 6 where money was quite challenging. So they pitched in by doing lots of hands-on work for us rather than paying money. So we took that financial hit, which made a big difference as well to our bottom line. So, and look, I'm actually really, really glad that we managed to bring them along with us. Not for a second did I say, did any of us say, you haven't got the money, you're not coming? What we decided was, how can we get you to Sydney? That was our mentality all the way through. So so that was the difficulties in preparing for it logistically and financially and so on. And yes, we had a lot of cake stalls. We did a raffle that was actually a lot more successful than we'd imagined. I think we raised about, I think it was 1,100 or something.
It was over
like
1,000, which might be similar to a cake store where you spend the previous day baking cakes. This one, all you have to do is print sheets of paper.
I've got to say, doing raffles is so much easier, and it was good because and as a fundraising idea for anyone who's got a youth group out there. All we did was, we had 24 people coming. So what we said was, we'll have 3 first prizes, which will be hampers, and Christmas was coming. So what we said was, buy 3 of something that would be that could be used in a family. And so we made a suggested list. So we had lots of toys, we had lots of soap and perfumes, lots of food items and Christmas crackers, and I can't even think of everything we had there. But we had these 3 awesome looking hampers. And then we got some gift vouchers. I'd been given a couple of gift vouchers at work for being away on retreats and stuff like that. So perfect that, that all helped as well. So it was really easy actually to get these hampers together. And then we just sold raffle tickets for about 3 weeks after masses, and we gave raffle books to our young people, and they went out and sold as well. And it was great. We actually, like I said, $1,100 for very little effort compared to what a cake stall. I'm sick of flour now, by the way. I'm going to develop a gluten intolerance just from being around all that flour. But that worked out really well, and that helped get us closer to our fundraising goal as well. So it was a big thing. So that was the challenge of fundraising. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to tell the story of the festival and just jump in with any questions or any observations. So the first morning, I'd had a coach booked to pick us up from Holy Family Parish, which is where we started from. Oh, by the way, the coaches was another cost as well. Anyway, so everything was set. Flights were booked for 8 o'clock in the morning with Tiger Airways, which 5 years ago probably people would never have thought of because Tiger Airways weren't so reliable as they are now. And the bus turned up. Everyone was on the bus. Except for one of our young people who was a little bit late. And so anyway, was on the phone with her, got it all sorted out. She got on the bus. We drove. We would have made it, I reckon, in our check-in time, except the traffic was a disaster. Basically, by 6 a.m., we were on the freeway. The driver did everything he could, took every shortcut he possibly could on a bus. And it basically... with the roadworks plus Melbourne traffic getting a bit worse on the freeways these days, that was it. We were just shot out of the water. So by the time we got there, we'd missed our check-in. We had, 31 people, with the St. Mary's group there with us as well. And basically, we'd been told, you're not getting on this flight. And so, so we told all of our people to sit down. We'll talk to the Tiger people and see what we can do. So what they would normally do, apparently, is they would transfer an individual, if it was an individual, a couple of people, for $85 to another flight that day, if they could organize it. And they said to us, so $85 per person, and, we can look for something for you. And I said, well, I said, these are all, look here, these are all teenagers. Where are they going to pull $85 from? So they also worked out they didn't have a flight for us because they didn't have, even if you put all the flights out for the day, they didn't have 31 seats, like even across the 3 or 4 flights they had that day. So so they called their customer care line, and they had a bit of a chat for a while. We told, they said, so why are you going to Sydney? I explained to them, we're going to a festival and whatever else. So I think we managed to make them feel sorry enough for us that they transferred us to a flight at 6:45 the next morning, and they didn't charge us $85 per person for that, which would have worked out to about $2,500. There's your financial planning there, Jared. So we decided, okay, we'll take it. We'll take the 6:45 a.m. flight. We put everyone, we put everyone using public transport all the way back to Holy Family Parish. It took us about probably 2 hours roughly to get that journey back. But what was really good was, like something like this could be really disheartening, the disappointment of not leaving for Sydney that day after all that time getting ready for it. But our young people bonded, which is really good. They helped each other out. They talked to each other on buses and whatever else. And what we decided was, so that we don't miss our 6:45 a.m. flight, we decided that day everyone come back to Holy Family at 7 p.m. We're going to sleep in the hall. We've got space for boys and space for girls. It's all good. We'll have dinner together. We'll go to the 7 o'clock mass. We'll sleep in the hall. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I managed to hire another bus. The bus company were awesome. I called them up. They charged us a little bit less for what they would for the bus. And they made sure they'd had a driver. They said, don't worry, we'll take care of it. They had a driver who turned up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We got there well before check-in. So all the jokes were, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? All that kind of stuff. And we got in our flights and we got to Sydney. So that was awesome. So when we got to Sydney, I'll cut out all the nitty-gritty details, but we managed to get ourselves to the festival. And the Archdiocesan Office of Youth in Melbourne people were awesome. They looked after us. So they brought their small bus that they had, loaded our luggage on the bus. I went back and helped unload while our young people went to the festival. So when we got to the festival, our young people were exhausted because they had about 3 or 4 hours of sleep the night before. So we tried to take them to a workshop where these 2 priests gave this pretty good presentation, and they fell asleep. The majority of them were sleeping on each other's shoulders, and you can't blame them. Like they were just absolutely wiped out. So we took them to the Melbourne Youth Office had a stall. They called it the Melbourne Central Stall. And it was just this area where, we could use for checking in and gathering, and they would, had all these Melbourne materials there, which was really cool. And most of our young people sat there on their couches and chairs and were sleeping. So we had to decide what we were going to do, because there was an evening plenary, which is a big gathering of everyone in a big stadium.
Well, they all had their naps.
Yeah, they had their little naps, but it probably wasn't enough. Father Nicholas Pierce came up to me and he said, look at them. They're probably not going to make it tonight. He said, why don't you take them back to the accommodation that you're at, and then get them to have an early sleep and then get them ready for the next day. And we actually thought that'd be a good idea. So we spoke to our young people and we said, we'll make you dinner. We'll get some fresh food, make you dinner. We'll go back, have a good sleep, and we'll start the next day. And they were all for that because you could see they were just red-eyed. And, a couple of them had caught colds because they were so tired. So they just needed to crash and have a good sleep. So that worked out really well, because when we got to day 2 of the festival, they were alert, they were awake, they were actually in really, really good spirits. Like the vibe was actually really good amongst the group. I was surprised how happy they were after all that. And then we started day 2. So I have 2 highlights from day 2 of the festival. One was I went to see Bishop Eugene Hurley's talk, and he gave a talk on the church as a field hospital. Let's talk about Pope Francis's thing about the medicine of mercy. And his particular talk was about, well, what do we do with people or with Catholics who find themselves in irregular situations that put them on the outside, on the fringes of the church. So think about, for example, the divorced and remarried, person. who's married again and has been told, you can't go to communion anymore, things like that. So yeah, what do we do? And what do we do with other people who find themselves in that situation? Where is Jesus in all that? And he was really good because he was talking about, he said, so most Catholics, they know the doctrine, like the teachings, about God and whatever. They know the law, but how does the law and the doctrine, which works for them, work for people in irregular situations? So where's the mercy in all that? When a person turns up to church and you say, you can't come to communion, or you can't do this, or you can't participate fully, it's almost, now I don't think it's purposeful, but in a way it could be stigmatizing in a way. You create a second-class Catholic. And so he was going on about that. And so what he said was, basically, we need to walk with people in whatever situations they're in and guide them into the fullness of the church. And he was saying we need to be careful not to be too judgmental either, because because people find it hard to walk through the doors of the church with this big, with this whole I'm not worthy, I'm second class. He told this beautiful story. There was a woman who would go to his church for mass, but she'd get to mass and she'd sit in the car for that hour of mass, so she wouldn't even go inside. So she'd come, sit for the hour, and drive off in her car, and she did it every week. And so one day he decided, I'm gonna find out what's going on. He went to the car and he sat in the car and he said, "Why aren't you coming inside? Why do you always come here?" So I won't describe her particular situation, but some pretty serious stuff had happened. She'd gone backpacking around Europe, run into the wrong guy. Things happened. People can imagine what happened next. And she found herself in a situation where, church law says you're a bit on the outside at the moment. And she said, every time I try and come into the church, I get teary and cry, and I just can't see myself walking through the doors. And he said to her, I want you to come next week. And he said, but if you don't come inside, I'm going to take the congregation outside and we're going to have mass outside near your car. And that was basically, and what he was saying was, if you can't come to the church is going to come to you. And it's the same thing with, symbolically, because we say, well, not symbolically, theologically, we say Jesus is the church, it's the body of Christ. And that's the kind of thing. The cross completes the gap between us and him, doesn't it? That Christ died for our sins. So, whatever gap we think we have that stops us from Jesus actually fills in that gap, no matter how big that is. The mercy of God is bigger than anything we think we could possibly do to screw up our lives. And so I found that, for me, that was the highlight. The festival was started and finished right there. Well, didn't finish, but that for me was one of the most eye-opening and enlightening things that I heard. He was a beautiful speaker. He was really, really powerful with that. So that night we had a big plenary gathering in a stadium of about 19,000 young people, which was really amazing. The short story there is that we had adoration that evening, and it was very much, I don't know if you remember when we went to World Youth Day 2008, big stadium, Matt Ma, adoration, that kind of, so exactly the same thing. I just got a message on my phone that made me deaf. Oh, sorry, I'll just turn that off. Anyway, Jacinta, who runs youth group with me, we were both having flashbacks to World Youth Day in 2008, which was beautiful. But the adoration itself was good. What I thought was really powerful was that some of the young people in our youth group aren't necessarily churchgoers yet, or haven't been to an adoration yet, but they all participated, and that for me was why it was so powerful. And then Matt Ma and music and dancing at the end, it was all really good. I was disappointed with one thing he said. I was actually quite furious about it. At one stage, he was trying to encourage everyone to dance, and he said, "Look, I'm dancing, and I'm the whitest guy in the room." And my youth group looked at me, and I said, "No, he's wrong. I'm the whitest guy in the room," and I was able to prove it as well. So, how dare he say that? He's got a microphone, so he can say that, and I can't defend myself. It's so cowardly. Yeah, so totally.
You should storm up on stage.
I should have. Yeah, I should have showed him my dancing. He would have worked out who the whitest guy in the room was pretty quickly. Yeah. So that was that one. Anyway, putting that aside. Day 3, the last day of the festival, was a reflection on World Youth Day 2008. So we had the big pilgrim walk. So you remember we walked across the harbour bridge and all that. Now, they didn't close off the harbour bridge this time. We had to walk along the side. But we started at Mary MacKillop's, so St. Joseph's Church, where Mary MacKillop is buried. and all of the Melbourne pilgrims went through there, and we had time to pray at her tomb. I took off my wedding ring and the crosses I wear went off, and I put them on her tomb. The wedding ring was a symbol of my family and of Isabel and her pregnancy and everything. So, because before we'd walked in, Bishop Mark Edwards said, think of that one thing. Don't go overboard. Just think of that one thing or person or whatever else that you want to pray for, and offer that to Mary MacKillop. So that was pretty easy. My family, Isabel and the pregnancy and the baby and everything. So that was where the intensity of my prayers was directed towards. And that was just a beautiful moment, considering how tired we were from walking. It was good to have that pause, and to be, with Mary MacKillop, in the presence of her tomb, but also in her heavenly presence as well, and just have that time to pray there. And then we did a massive walk. The step count was about 31,000 steps by the end of it. We walked from there to the Domain, and that was quite a big walk. And we were physically exhausted by the end of it. Our young people fell asleep on the grass. There was still an hour before Mass, and it was hot. The sun was on us. It was all that kind of, that awful things that make you grumpy. And I was really grumpy, actually. I wasn't grumpy with people, but I was feeling really like, what are we doing here? But when the Mass started, everything changed. And actually, the weather cooled down pretty quickly at that point too. And the Mass was something, I don't know how to describe how beautiful it was. I haven't got words, but there was something really community building about it. Archbishop Anthony Fisher spoke so powerfully, and he started with a Star Wars reference, and he's going, the Star Wars episode 8 is coming out soon, but he tied it in really nicely. He spoke about good and evil and the season of Advent, and he was talking about how the characters, Star Wars is in episodes, and in each of those episodes, the characters have a story about the choice between good or evil, which makes a lot of sense. And then he said that he spoke about Jesus. Jesus had an episode. He did have a choice between good or evil. We know the story of the temptation in the desert and so on. But like Luke Skywalker, he chooses the right thing. He said Mary had an episode, and it wasn't about the choosing of good or evil, but it was the great yes. She had the choice there. That was her episode. And he went through, saints and so, in ordinary church people, and he said, well, what's your episode? And I thought that was really powerful. So what's your story? What's your episode going to be about? What choices are you going to make? And that capped off a wonderful festival. Overall, the theme of the festival was opening up new horizons to spreading joy. So how could we be joyfully Christian in our society, regardless of what society is or becomes, or whatever concerns we have about it? How do we open up the Christian joy? How do we be signs of that? And one of the strongest things that came up at the big plenary sessions was the great yes of Mary, the fiat. How do we say yes to God on a daily basis? And in our yes to God, we open ourselves up to being models of Christian joy. And from there, it got easier. This was the most exhausting festival, I've got to say, physically, mentally, and everything. And I think, even though Adelaide was so easy, this one, and I'd probably say this on behalf of a few people, this one broke us down physically and mentally. But in that breaking down, which I think you find in most pilgrimages anyway, it prepared us for the message, and I'm so grateful for that. I didn't enjoy being broken to pieces, but I was so grateful for the message afterwards. I think my youth group came away with something special because they were still talking about it afterwards. A few have already mentioned that they miss it. When we got together for our parish carols night, and I said, we're going to do this, they just jumped in straight away. I had no problems getting them. You saw how early they turned up, and when they turned up for that rehearsal the week before, they were just all over it. And they're just a wonderful group of young people. And I hope that more than anything, I've had a journey, but I hope their individual faith journeys, got a bit of an injection of hope from there. And I hope that this Advent season now will open up, doors to Christ and open them up to their everyday yeses as well. There was something powerful. So, Jared, that was the Australian Catholic Youth Festival. I've spoken for a while. Did you want to... Yeah, I'll just take a breath. But did you want to say anything about it, or any observations or anything?
Yeah, there was 24 of you, and then, St. Mary's. But did you spend time... The accommodation, was that a Melbourne-based accommodation?
Yeah.
Like all of Melbourne, or a certain portion of Melbourne?
So basically, the Melbourne Youth Office found a place that had 125 spots available, and they booked it before any other Catholic booking agencies managed to get it. So they booked that one. And that had 125 beds there. So they then advertised it and said anyone from the Melbourne diocese who wants it, book while you can. So I booked our 24 places. I just looked after the Holy Family side of it. And it was $45 per night per person. So and that was the cheapest thing around. And what was good was we had 125 people from Melbourne. So we made lots of, new contacts there as well. Yeah.
Very good. And then, did it go from when? I suppose you had Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Did you have anything Sunday? I feel like we missed a day somewhere in there.
Yeah, well,
because it was Wednesday would have been the day you went up, but then Thursday you went up, so you had Thursday day, which you sort of skipped.
Yeah.
And then Friday, was the mass on Saturday or Sunday?
The final mass was Saturday evening, so it was like a Saturday vigil
and so
mass.
Sunday was a more relaxed.
Yeah, Sunday was like...
Because I think we didn't do much on Sunday. Yeah.
So Sunday was our travel day, because we relied a lot on public transport in Sydney to get us to the airport.
Why didn't you walk there?
Well, funny you should say
you had a lot of practice.
There was quite a bit of walking involved as well. But we tried to minimise the walking as much as possible because everyone was carrying their luggage as well, and they were a bit tired. So, but yeah, we managed to do that. I guess one thing I did learn from all of especially the disasters at the beginning was obviously keep a cool head all the time. Like I never showed any disappointment or any anger or grumpiness or whatever, because the way that the leaders respond is going to have an effect on everyone who's in the group. So because we stayed positive, everyone else, that positivity stayed with everyone. We joked it off, and I was saying, look, we're going to laugh this off in a year. We're going to say, oh, remember that time we missed our flight, all that, yeah. So, there was a positive there, and that's the grace of God, I guess. Taking us on the journey that we didn't expect to be taking. Like it was hard pilgrimage right from the beginning all the way to the very end. But there were unintended positives, and I was saying to Jacinta, our other leader, I said, I wouldn't have done this any other way. I would do it exactly the way that it's happened. I think it's been what our group needed. It was good in that way.
Very good. And I suppose finally, so that's pretty much a wrap of what you sort of go through to do so. So I suppose anyone who's thinking, how can I do this? How can I join? It's every 2 years.
Every 2 years, yeah.
And do we know, they would have announced where the next one is?
Yep, next one's in Perth. So, so that's going to be an interesting one to organise.
Well, Sydney's probably the most expensive state in Australia. I'm not sure if Perth has kept that up since the mining boom's tapered off.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not so expensive, but what, 3 hours behind us? Or ahead of us?
There's 2 hours or something like that?
2 or 3. I thought it was 3.
I don't know.
In fact, it is 3 because
I'm still in Sydney time and it's exactly the same as ours.
Yeah, but we've got a accounting client, who's in Western Australia, and I rang them at 10 o'clock our time. And as soon as he answered, I was like, "Oh crap, I forgot. You're 3 hours behind." And he said, "No, I'm awake." You must be lucky he's an early riser, but they're 3 hours behind. So, and that'll happen around the same time, won't it?
Yes, it'll be sometime in early December 2019. Yes. Oh, the other thing I should mention is that this festival kicked off the Year of Youth as well. So the Australian Church is celebrating the Year of Youth now. So anyone who's listening, who's in Australia, who's involved in youth ministry or not involved in youth ministry, let's look for ways and strategies and attach yourself to any youth officers who are doing things for the Year of Youth. Because this is a way to engage young people in the life of the church. Our young people are not the church of tomorrow. They're in today's church. They're not waiting to become part of the church. They're there. So how do we get them involved and give them an authentic experience of Christ as well? And
you'd recommend for someone who's interested in going to this to go as part of a group?
Absolutely. Yeah. Unless you, look.
Not so much for the logistics and the other side of things, but for the comradeship and how you grow together.
Yeah.
It's an experience that you share, not that you hold yourself.
Yeah, we had a couple of people who were new who didn't know the group very well that came with us, and it was good for them because they had someone there that they could become that they could bond with, and so not be alone. And we tried really hard. I think we managed to succeed, but we didn't want anyone in that group of 24 to be alone in a big group as well. So I think we managed to, for the most part, deal with that too. Yeah, but I'd recommend going with a group. I recommend just going through all the pain, all the trauma, because
if someone's going for the first time, let's not baptize them with fire by saying do a leadership role.
Oh look, don't take it. Just
start with a leadership role.
Help how you can. The group that you're with, help how you can. Just contribute where you can. Help your leaders out. I think that's the key thing. Leaders rely on the people.
I think the whole approach and everything that you guys all took as Holy Family Youth Group, it wasn't left to you and the three others. It was Jacinta, Sonia, and Johan, wasn't it?
That's correct.
It wasn't
yeah.
left to you four to do things. It was always a shared burden.
Yep.
And that made the burden light.
Yeah,
or
and-
lighter.
Yeah, and
Not light.
And to their credit, while we were in Sydney, Jacinta and I were delegating like anything because our first group that we took to Melbourne in 2013, 8 people, and all we had to do was catch the train every morning. No problem.
Dream. Get him to have it back here again.
I wish.
Just share it around.
Yeah, Adelaide.
Brisbane will be next.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Don't want to think about that.
Well, you've gone.
Yeah.
It's basically expanded. So it's Adelaide.
Yeah.
Melbourne to Adelaide,
Yep.
8 hours. Sydney, 12 hours.
Yep.
Perth, who knows?
Yeah, 3 hours. Yeah.
And then Brisbane.
Yeah. 50 hours.
So yeah. Well,
Yeah.
in about 10 years, maybe you'll be having it in Broome.
Gosh. Yeah. Who knows? Why not? Let's do it there.
You can go and listen to the Bishop of Broome in his hometown.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
What was his name? I forgot. Oh, Eugene Hurley. Yeah,
Yes.
Bishop Eugene Hurley.
No, actually, no. That was my mistake. He's actually the Bishop of Darwin.
Oh.
Now, the Bishop of Broome is actually our friend Bishop Saunders, who we did a podcast on, if you remember. He did a letter on
remember.
sports,
Yep.
to the church and sports. Yeah, who I thanked personally a couple of years after we did that podcast. Yeah. Or no, a year after we did it, whatever it was. Yeah. So I don't know. We've got to do that. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Well, yeah. Eventually, you'll end up having a Catholic Youth Festival in at Bishop Saunders or Bishop
Yeah.
Hurley's hometown.
That's right. Who knows?
Yeah. Right now it's Perth, so
Yeah.
that's where the focus will be.
Yep.
For the next couple of years,
Or-
towards.
Yeah. Another one could be there could be a few bookings on the Spirit of Tasmania at some stage. Like 200 young people on a boat going to Tassie for the youth festival. Who knows? Yeah. Tasmania's still part of Australia, isn't it?
we haven't cut them off yet.
Yeah, we accept them as ours, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
we accept them. We accept New Zealand too, don't we?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll end up one in Wellington.
Although considering
Wellington.
Wellington, yeah. Sorry, just offended everyone. although actually, what was really positive, speaking of New Zealand, is that New Zealand just had their first New Zealand Catholic Youth Festival, and it wasn't as big in scope as ours, but it was certainly a really good start. I was following some news feeds. Matt Maher was there. They had some good, they tried to follow, in some cases, the Australian Youth Festival formula. So I think it's really exciting. They've kicked it off, and I hope that goes really, really well. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I hope that they grow that too. That'd be really good.
Very good. We Australian Catholic Youth Festivaled out.
I am. In so many ways, I'm youth festivaled out for this year. And you can check with Jacinta and Sonia. They are youth festivaled out too.
Almost only gives you 11 days. So.
Yeah, that's right. So, I think we don't want to think about the logistics of youth festivals for quite some time. All right. Well, let's move on. It is the season of Advent, and in this season, it's as always, I've said in different podcasts, it's a time to look back at the expectation of the people of the Old Testament for the coming of their Messiah, which culminates in Christmas Day, and it's a time for us to look forward to the coming of Christ again. We talk in the creed, in the Catholic creed, we say Christ will come again, and we look forward to this second coming of Christ, to the establishing of the kingdom of God on earth, and so on, and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And so I guess now, with I was going to say a week to go, with a couple of days to go, we're only a couple of days away now. We got jibbed this year.
Yeah, got a week. Yeah. Well, last year I suppose we had a whole extra week, being that it was a Sunday Christmas.
Yep, that's right. This Sunday we'll light the last Advent candle, the fourth
in the morning.
In the morning, and then the evening we'll have vigil mass and midnight mass, and then off we go. But let's get ourselves some Advent reflection.
Let's be clear. It's not us that are getting jibbed. It's the kids.
Yeah, it's the kids. Yeah.
No, hang on. Sorry, let me get this straight.
You
No,
have to run the logic
the kids
part,
are not getting jibbed because they are getting Advent calendars. Everyone's Advent calendars are 1st of December. But guess what? Advent didn't start until the 3rd or 4th of December. So they're getting a few free chocolates here.
Yes, you're right. They are. Yeah, they get that. That's going to be a good week for them in the Advent.
Because
calendar.
Advent calendars, well, they're not really Advent calendars.
Yeah, they're
Because
December
they're not-
calendars with
Yeah.
chocolates in them. Yeah.
But they start 1st of December, but our Advent started, I don't know, I think it was 3rd or the 4th.
Yeah. You know what?
So, yeah, a couple of free bits of chocolate. So, no, the kids are not getting jibbed. We are getting jibbed.
We should get our kids
Back to it.
some Catholic Advent calendars where they open it up and instead of chocolate it says, "Say a prayer for your mum." Aww.
I'm not so sure I like that.
I don't want to do that.
And the reason is,
Yeah.
that'd take a fair bit of chocolate to fit that amount of writing on there.
Yeah, true. True. Let's kick off though. So I want to take us back to the beginning of Advent on Sunday, December the 3rd. Now, if you,
Okay, that was the 3rd. See, I was right.
there you go. Yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah. So let's remember that weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was supposed to be our storm apocalypse, if you remember. where Friday
It's forgotten pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Was it Melbourne, wasn't it? Or was it the
Melbourne.
state?
Yeah, well, it was the state. Melbourne copped a little bit. Its worst day was Friday.
A drizzle.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, actually, my school hall, we had our last day of school for our year 11s and 12s that day, and the heavy rain, actually, we had a water feature in our halls. The water started pouring down one of the walls, which is pretty bad.
Well, now you know where the holes are.
Yeah, that's can patch
Otherwise,
that,
you'd
yeah.
never know.
Get some chewing gum. We can patch that up now. Yeah, but so anyway, but on that day, Pope Francis. So he does a general audience on Wednesdays, and he does a Angelus on Sundays, and he'll do a bit of a preaching on that Sunday. So on that Sunday, he kicked off Advent, and he said a couple of things. So I just thought we might go through some of the things that he said and have some reflections of our own. So it says here, using an article from the Catholic News Agency, Pope Francis kicked off the Church's Advent season, saying, "It's a time to let go of worldly distractions that take us away from God and focus on growing closer to Him through prayer and concern for others." No surprises there, obviously. So, referring to that day's readings, which stress the importance of being vigilant, the Pope said, "The watchful person is one who, in the noise of the world, does not let themselves be overwhelmed by distraction or superficiality, but lives in a full and conscious way, with a concern above all for others." So with this attitude, we quickly become aware of the tears and necessity of our neighbour, and we can also welcome the human and spiritual qualities and capacities. He said, adding that an attentive person also turns to the world, trying to counteract indifference and the cruelty of it, rejoicing in the treasures of beauty and that also exist and must be preserved. Very Bishop Eugene Hurley, in the Church as a Field Hospital. Did you have any reflections on anything that Pope Francis said in this article, Gerry?
I suppose just that section there, and that's one thing we probably didn't mention at the start about what we've been doing. The Carols Night, Lindsay, myself, and Lino, who's appeared on a few of our early episodes, most noticeably
Yeah.
episode 7,
Yep.
Noah's episode.
Noah's, yeah.
Actually got together for the first time in probably a few years and did a performance at the Carols. One of the songs we did was a Trans-Siberian Orchestra song called Christmas in the Air.
Yeah,
And the
that's
lyrics of that are quite similar in talking about what Pope Francis is saying here.
They're great lyrics, yeah.
In it's one of the lines is strangers greeting on every street, and what's the next line? Good thing I remembered it on the night. I can't remember it now.
Good thing you could sing it, yeah.
But things like that, Christmas isn't solely, and it's mainly, but not solely, about the birth of Jesus. That's not all we are looking towards.
Yeah.
And Pope Francis is pointing that out here.
Yeah.
In that we're not just looking to the birth of Jesus, but we are looking to the birth of Jesus together.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's probably
right.
the mentality that
As
gets
a
forgotten a
church,
bit.
yes.
We sort of look, okay, it's the birth of Jesus, and I'm looking at him, and that's great. I'm looking at him.
Yeah.
You're not looking at what anyone else is doing and worried about anyone else. I think he uses the word vigilant.
Yes.
You're not being vigilant at all to your neighbour.
Yep.
And I don't know, just reading that line, it made me think of that song that we sung at that Carols, where it does talk about greeting your neighbour.
Yes.
And that can be as simply as all they need.
Yep.
That's the line. Such a thing shouldn't be on Christmas Day, the being alone.
Yes. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. The gospel reading of the day, which I've got in front of me, which I won't read all of, but it is Jesus. It says, he's saying to his disciples, "Be watchful, be alert. You do not know when the time will come." It is like a man traveling abroad. He leaves home and he places servants in charge, each with his own work, and orders the gatekeeper to be on the watch. "Watch, therefore, you do not know when the Lord is coming," etc., etc. But he emphasizes a couple of times watch. There's a few things there. And on first reading of this, you might read and go, "Oh, gee, you never know he's going to come. Oh, watch out, scary, scary." But that's not what the message is at all. If you think about it, the people of the Jewish people of the time, the Old Testament, Jesus was among them, yet some of them were indifferent. Like think of some of the Pharisees who were described as hypocrites because they liked all the nice things.
Thought they were interchangeable, those two words.
Yeah, well, in a way, most of them. So there were some good ones there too, I'm sure. But yeah,
it's kind of like anything.
Yeah.
The good ones don't get a mention.
Yeah,
they're just not newsworthy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're not good enough. Yeah, but they, basically, God was right there in their midst, but they refused it, and then they killed this person who claims to be God. God made man and whatever else. they weren't watchful or alert, and they were indifferent. Think of Jesus and telling the story, the parable of the Pharisee who's at the front of the church saying, "Oh God, I've done all this for you. Look how great I am.
Look at me, look at me."
Yeah, look at me, exactly. And the tax collector who's at the back of the synagogue, who says, "I'm not worthy. I'm a sinner," and whatever else. One recognized God in their midst. The other one recognized the God in their mind that they've invented, who was, they were more powerful than this God because they basically, created this God, and then worshipped it in a sense.
I'd say they both recognise God in their midst. It's how they, how they entreated and approached.
One is, I'm the voice of God, therefore I know everything, and the other one is, how, I know what I've done in my life, Bishop Eugene Hill again. How does God fill in the gap for me and bring me closer?
You wouldn't be surprised if the Pharisee, that one, if he was allowed to continue, he might have started, perhaps giving God some pointers about where he was going wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So God, next time you could, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the whole idea is to be watchful, and I guess it's a very appropriate beginning of Advent reading, because now that although it applies to the people of the time in that context, it applies to us now, because what Pope Francis is saying is, you're not being watchful, you're not being attentive when you ignore your brother and sister. That you're being, you're simply being indifferent. Indifference is the opposite of watching, isn't it? If watching is not sitting there in a chair fretting and biting your nails. I was going to say biting your teeth. Sorry, biting your nails, thinking, "Oh, when is God coming? When is God coming?" No, even that might be a form of indifference. Being overcome by fear. What we're being asked to do is to watch and wait by being out there and being God's people. And this is what the cooperation with grace is. Theology of the Human Person 101 is God gives us grace through the sacraments, and we cooperate with that grace, and our cooperation is in our doing of things as well. It's our prayers, it's our actions, it's all these things. That is our watching and our waiting.
I always figured, especially with that reading, in that the person who is perhaps being watchful by their actions probably doesn't need to worry about being watchful.
Well, and that's the whole idea. If you are doing those things, what's there to worry about?
Because then you're not being indifferent.
Yep.
But then it's sort of, it works for itself.
Yep.
If you're involved, if you're integrated, if you're trying, or even if you're trying to be part of something, then you're not. Then you I don't know. In a way, it's like you're too busy to be indifferent, and you're too busy to worry about whether you're being watchful or not. Because in a way, you already are.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, exactly. You're already ticking all the boxes. What am I watching? I'm watching out for my brother and my sister because I'm trying to bring them on the journey that I'm on as well. I don't want these ones to be lost to God. I want these ones to know what grace is and how grace can be empowering. I want them to know the joy that I'm experiencing, not by bashing them with a Bible, but by simply being present and, in some cases, being church for them until they're ready to enter into the church themselves. So, can I just move on to anything else you want to add, or just move on to the end of this?
Let's go to the next. Yeah, there's a bit more to go.
Yep. So, actually, what were you looking at? Because I'm near the end, but I'll just... Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, because we'd been on that bit for a while. So,
no worries.
As I was saying, there is more to go through.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll just go to the last paragraph before it talks about him reciting the Angelus prayer. Pope Francis says, they are the conditions that allow God to interrupt our existence, to restore meaning to it, and to value his presence, full of goodness and tenderness, he said, and closed his address praying that Mary, the model and icon of vigilant expectation, will guide us to an encounter with her son Jesus, reviving our love for him. So, I mean, again, how many podcasts have we had, Jared, where we said it all points back to Jesus at the end of the day?
Probably 45.
Exactly.
Sorry, 44.
That's it. Yeah.
Nearly 45.
Yeah, plus all the half podcasts we've had as well. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it's always that, isn't it? And this is the key thing here. When we are watchful and alert, that is, doing the things that we've just described as the criteria for watchful and alert, this allows God to interrupt our existence, and this is the key thing that we're on about all the time. That God is able to become present because our hearts are opening, because we're cooperating more and more every day with God.
You could say a practical example of that might just be your involvement in the Catholic Youth Festival.
Absolutely.
You didn't like that at all.
Yes.
But you're active and you're involved, and you're probably too busy to be indifferent about it.
Yes.
And hey, look what happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not talking myself up.
I'm not saying that, but the way, I mean, the listeners will probably agree, the way you just describe the happenings, it almost it's almost linking back. That's like a practical example of
Yeah.
what we're now saying is
Yeah.
is the theory.
Us as leaders, we could have said, who cares about our young people? We're so damn tired. Let's look after ourselves. Kids, I don't care if you're tired.
Kids, you're tired. We want to go. We're going.
Yeah, we're tired. Just
So you're coming along.
Yeah, or you stay here. We're going back to the accommodate. Yeah. So and to the credit of of the leaders that were with me, we stayed the course together. And that's what got us through is that oneness, that togetherness, and it was really, I mean, at the end of the day, we were so empty that all we had was the grace of God to rely on. Really, that's all we had to fall on, and that grace of God showed itself in so many ways in the people that supported us, the Melbourne Youth Office, the people who knew our story, and we had so many people coming up and saying, "Oh, we heard what happened to you. Are you okay? Can we do this for you? Can we do that for you?" And that was the grace of God interrupting our existence, in a very simple kind of way. And Pope Francis' last thought here, though, he says when we get to this stage, of the watchfulness that we've just talked about, and God is interrupting our existence, what does it do? It gives us meaning. It gives value to the presence that it has in our lives. And we see that what is God's presence? It's goodness and it's tenderness. These are Pope Francis' words, not ours. And he says, what does this do? It just revives our love for Jesus more and more. And this is the point of Advent. I've got to say, full disclosure here, that until very, very recently, I wasn't doing Advent very well because of, so I was so busy that I let all the busyness become distraction. And I actually, at the youth festival, I had to go and make a pretty decent sized confession about all of this stuff. I'm not confessing my sins here on the podcast, but I had to unload a lot of stuff that I'd put into my life, allowing things to take over, all the because of work and the business and the youth festival and whatever. I'd sort of gone into survival mode, and that survival mode made me a little bit less caring about my job in some, not all the time, but in some particular instances, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that right now, or, or I don't want to do much of this. And so I think it's only been very recently that, especially through the youth festival, that my Advent, heart has been renewed and I'm feeling a lot more ready for Christmas than I probably had been at the start of Advent as well.
Well, it's a journey of 4 weeks, or in our case, we've only been allowed 3 and
Yes.
a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what Advent is. It's really a journey. It doesn't matter from where you're starting from. It really matters how you finish, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important. And I think it's really important to say that it's not too late. That's my lesson. I guess we've talked about it before.
I think we've had that before in
I
a
feel like
previous
we've talked
event.
about
Is
it,
that it's not too late even on December the 26th.
Someone who's a really big fan of this podcast, can you go back to our last Advent episodes and see if we actually said that? Yeah. But I guess that's the continued message. It isn't too late. There is this hope that's on the horizon. Even if you don't do Christmas well, it doesn't mean that you've missed Jesus. Jesus, if there's not a train that you've missed, or a flight, with Tiger Air, like Jesus is.
Yeah, or a baby shower, or the birth itself.
Yeah.
It's not as though it's a human birth. Whereas if you're out of town being grumpy,
Yeah.
if the baby's born, you don't get to visit at the hospital. Well, it's not the case with Jesus.
Yeah. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, I guess, with Bishop Hurley's talk. The cross fills in the gap. That's whatever deficiencies we might have in our journey to Jesus actually, he closes whatever gaps there might be.
Yeah, the cross bridge is the gap. We've just got to recognise it.
Yeah. Speaking of
And not look at the gap.
Yeah, speaking of cross bridges, or should I say cross guards, just a final bit of news here. Now,
News.
Yeah, news, yeah. Fake news. This actually comes under fake news, which Pope Francis actually said was a sin recently, which he's probably right about, but not in this case.
This
is
article
more,
or the...
Yeah, this, yeah.
No, this article is the sin, or just the general fake news?
The idea of spreading fake news in order
I
to
just
elicit...
figured that was a
Yeah.
standard
It's
thing
basically
on any side of any...
Yeah, which makes sense. But I just wanted to bring this up as a bit of a ha ha ha, Christmas is coming. But I don't know if anyone who's listening has heard of Eye of the Tiber, which is obviously by the name, it's a parody website where they, some Catholics get together. I actually find this website quite evangelizing in a way because it is Christian joy. But Eye of the Tiber have written an article called, says, in the spirit of the Star Wars movie that's coming up, Pope's new crossguard lightsaber crossier stirring up controversy with liturgical purists. And basically what the article is describing is the cross that Pope Francis holds is crossier. They've got an image and they've doctored the image to have the two lightsaber beams that are like Kylo Ren's, from The Force Awakens, his lightsaber that come out of the side. And they've doctored the image so that he's got that as well. And so the pretend news here is that liturgical purists are really disappointed about it. So I'll just read a couple of things, and I'm not sure. I was going to say we'll analyze it, but I don't think we're going to analyze, to be honest. But it says here, Vatican Television took the liturgical world by storm last Friday by giving Catholics their very first official look at a short teaser trailer from the upcoming papal Christmas Mass. Focusing much of the trailer on the new cantors and deacons that will play a role at the Mass, the 88-second Christmas Mass teaser had many excited about Christmas. But along with those feelings of Christmas ecstasy came some controversy with liturgical purists about the Pope's unique crossguard lightsaber crossier, which has consequently polarized many diehard fans of the Mass. Many of the complaints and cynicism stem from the belief that the new crossier is a cheap Vatican "it looks cool" thought process, and that having these side-angled blades would just put the Pope at risk of cutting himself during the entrance procession. Popes haven't had crossiers like this before, so why now? Asked one blogger. It's got to be to sell more merchandise. It's Christmas season after all. And the church could be using this as a way to sell more of their line of papal action figures. I don't know what to say about this, Gerry, except it's, in a way, it's a joke, but it kind of speaks a bit of truth as well, doesn't it? It's the 88 seconds is actually a Star Wars reference as well, because I think the Force Awakens trailer was 88 seconds long, or it might have been the Last Jedi one. So this is clearly a reference to how trailers build up expectations. And the parody is, how Star Wars fans, they react to trailers. Oh, you can't do that, man. How are you doing that? You're ruining Star Wars. Oh, yeah.
You're ruining your life.
Yeah. Whatever. Is there anything you wanted to say about this? Because I'm not sure what analysis we've got to put in here.
I'm surprised they're not more worried about the fact he looks like he's the crosier's become a Sith blade.
Exactly. It's actually a dark side blade, which is kind of scary.
Surprised they're not more worried about that.
Yeah.
Rather than him cutting his fingers or something, holding it.
So it gets a bit geeky here. It says, many say that the Crossier 2.0 has a major flaw in the design, saying that the light emitter sticks out inches before the lightsaber quillion begins on either side of the Crossier, meaning that the little emitters could simply be severed off if it came in contact with another crossguard lightsaber Crossier, and if that Crossier were to slide down the main shaft. The Vatican, however, has come out in defense of the new Crossier, with an inside source saying that there is no chance of severing off one of the side emitters because Mass typically does not have more than one person carrying the Crossier. He also wanted to explain why the Crossier's guard works. The Crossier lightsaber beam goes all the way through the handle, so even if you cut off the metal, the beam is still there. It's really not that hard to figure out. Merry Christmas, everyone. Jared, I don't think I've got anything else to say about this.
Yeah, it speaks for itself, doesn't it?
It really does. So I'll put a link to this in our show notes. It's from Eye of the Tiber. Have a read. Have a good laugh, everyone. We've probably spoiled all the good bits anyway. Yeah. So I think we should probably wrap it up there, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do.
So with that, firstly, let's talk about how people can get in touch with us. If you'd like to complain about... if you're a liturgical purist who'd like to complain about lightsaber crossiers... contact another blog. But if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find us on our website at whatthefaith.net. Or past episodes there. We've got an archive of all our previous episodes, which you can listen to if you'd like to find out more about us. Episode 27, I think, was our origin story. If you're new to our podcast and would like to learn more about us and how we started, you can check that one out. We also, from time to time, post a few things up on Facebook at facebook.com/WTFaithNet. You can join our little community there. And say a couple of things to us. We'd love to interact with you. On Twitter, we are at whatthefaith net, I think. What are those?
Did you write it down?
I did, but I think I've got it wrong. I think we're actually... Anyway, just look up What the Faith on Twitter. You'll find us. Or someone else's What the Faith. And you can get in touch with us there. So we'd love to interact with you. So to all of our listening community who have put up with our gaps throughout the year and who are still hanging on to our podcast. Yeah.
I think it was just one gap.
Yeah, our
gap with a capital G.
Yeah, massive gap.
Chasm.
Yeah, for people who are hanging on at Springfield Gorge. So that's a joke for Caroline and Simpson fans. we'd like to wish you the sincerest, merry, happy, and holy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. We'll come back hopefully in January to start podcasting again and be a bit more consistent.
We're decent with that. We're decent with January, February.
Yeah, we're good at the start of the year. Yeah, but may this Christmas be a time where wherever you are and whatever you're doing and however you're feeling, whatever's left in that gap between you and Jesus, the baby Jesus, the child Jesus who became incarnate and became one of us, knowing what our lives are like and knowing who we are and knowing what we need in the flesh, may this Jesus close the gap and open your heart and fill you, with his grace and prepare you for the season of Christmas. Christmas isn't a day, it's a season. So may this Christmas season be something of fellowship and brotherhood and goodness. And may there be someone there for you, that God leads you to. And Jared.
Beautiful. Amen.
Yep. Jared, Merry Christmas to you as well. We're going to see each other on Christmas Day with your families and stuff like that. We're going to get fat together, and then
later on,
again. Yeah, we've got we've got Christmas lunch and Christmas dinner. There's all that going on,
and then Christmas midnight.
Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, it's such a busy day. But to you and Caroline, who's listening, who couldn't be with us today. She's busy with a handful of kids. But Merry Christmas to you as well, and Isabel, who's staring at me, wondering what's going on. Just sitting there being pregnant while she scrapbooks.
I think she's eyeballing you.
Yeah, she is. Merry Christmas, Isabel. Good. Okay. And we'll see.
She thinks she was asking for a microphone.
Yeah.
Nope. Shaking the head.
Yep.
All right.
That's it. We'll call it a day. Call it a year.
Call it a night.
Excellent. For that too. All right. And we'll see you all for episode 46.
Yes.
Bye.